of my career has been in school libraries, and my research focus has been on immersive learning for education, particularly for libraries. Suzette is working on a PhD with a focus on virtual reality, so I'm very happy to work with her and learn from her about this cutting-edge technology. We hope to share current information about virtual reality and how it will soon enter education, libraries in particular. You may have heard a lot of hype about virtual reality recently in the news, but the question is, can it be educational? You can see in this slide here that I have a child wearing an HMD, or a head-mounted display, in the photo. And we're going to be sharing a variety of HMDs and virtual reality systems with you, along with some of the applications and the predictions for education and for libraries in the future. Yes, we do believe that libraries may soon share virtual experiences with library patrons, just like circulating books. Librarians have been in the forefront of technology tools for decades. Laptops, tablets, mobile devices, and bring your own device attitude is now commonplace in libraries and in classrooms. During the past few years, my role as a school librarian changed from mainly curating and circulating print materials to becoming the tech guru on my campus to troubleshoot Wi-Fi, apps, server issues. And this photo that I'm sharing now shows my after-school 5th grade technology club working on a digital citizenship game in Minecraft. Even the kindergartners in my school library were totally familiar with the popular game of Minecraft. Yes, students today are active participants in virtual worlds already. Minecraft is sort of like the kindergarten of virtual worlds. If you would type a Y in the text chat, if you're familiar with Minecraft, or you have any children or know of children who are utilizing Minecraft, that would be great. I see a lot of people are familiar with Minecraft. Working in the Minecraft Club after school as prosumers, which Alvin Toffler describes us, we're both consumers and producers of media in global digital participatory culture, as I like to call it. My 5th graders designed and built a game to teach younger students. And you can view the game on YouTube. I did create a mixed reality machinima. And I wrote a research article about these students and their experience of designing and building a digital citizenship game. You can also access that. I'm giving you the links in the text chat. You can maybe look at those later and copy those links. The concept of a makerspace in libraries allows library patrons to collaborate together, to learn, to make, to build and share knowledge. And there's a do-it-yourself movement. You know, it coincides really with this makerspace movement. If you type a Y in chat, if you've been involved in a classroom or a library makerspace, I think that my experience in Minecraft, this experience of a virtual immersive learning experience, could actually be called a virtual makerspace when you get students designing and building in a virtual immersive learning environment. Students can not only learn in physical classrooms, but they can also learn in virtual and augmented spaces as well. Teaching library skills or teaching information literacy has certainly changed, and my students had no concept of what a card catalog is. If you would type a Y in the text chat, if you're old enough to have seen one of these on the screen right now, that's, you know, the way we searched. Our search strategies were so different growing up in a primarily physical print hierarchy of information. Well, information search strategies have changed, and showing students some of these old media formats can be fun, like movie projectors, film strips, microfiche, floppy disks. You know, these fascinate young people. But for us, sometimes keeping up with some of these the evolution of technology can be kind of overwhelming because the pace seems to get faster and faster. So now, virtual reality is about to enter mainstream use. And virtual reality has really been around for decades. It's been around since the 1950s. It's really not new, one of the first virtual reality tools was actually the ViewMaster, which was introduced at the New York World's Fair in 1939. I'd like you to type a Y in the text chat if you remember clicking through the pictures on the picture wheel on a ViewMaster. The military has used virtual reality for simulation for years, but only now is it becoming affordable enough for all of us to try it out. As we go along, if you have any questions about any of the tools that we talk about, if you jot them down, we'll try to answer those at the end of the presentation. Suzette is currently working on a virtual reality project, and she's going to share some of the latest tools for virtual reality. It's predicted to bring social experiences across distance, similar to what we experience here in virtual worlds. And as we explore some of the virtual reality systems and experiences, we're beginning to see that there is a place for both virtual worlds and virtual reality. They're not exactly the same. There are a lot of differences. Often we get glimpses of scientific discoveries early on through science fiction literature. Think about the metaverse, which we were introduced to in Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. Type a Y if you've read Snow Crash or you've heard about, how we can compare the metaverse to Second Life. Sci-fi writers often predict the future, and sometimes those predictions, they're in fantastical ways that turn out in reality to be quite different. In his novel, The Diamond Age, a book becomes a virtual experience. The Young Lady's Illustrated Primer contains avatars and immersion, similar to both virtual reality and augmented reality. And these experiences, when I read these novels, they seemed way far out only a few years ago. But now, young children are using augmented reality. They're using apps to create, like Erasma, to create book reports in our school libraries. The Community Virtual Library here in Second Life has been around for about 10 years now. I cannot believe that. Sharing immersive learning experiences with others is a role of virtual world librarians, just as educators use them for all types of curriculum in the physical world. Librarians are working in physical, virtual, and augmented spaces. Video games are actually now considered a literacy genre, a literary genre, as they contain stories and beautiful cinematography. How many of you have experience with gamification in education? Digital apps, video games, immersive experiences, all of these often require deep learning and critical thinking. So the question is, will virtual reality provide opportunities for high-level learning? I recently attended a VR event that mostly showed fighter games. I had to combat zombies, which was particularly scary as they were coming towards me. So these VR developers may find it more profitable to create shooter games because they sell, right? But the field of education is ripe for VR content. Sharing this content through libraries seems like a perfect match. Those of you with virtual world experience already understand that learners can enter simulations that could not be possible in the physical world. This photo that I'm sharing now shows a 3D model of the Big Six research model by Mike Eisenberg from the University of Washington I School. And through this model, learners can walk through and explore the process of research, such as defining a task, search strategies, accessing information, using the information, and synthesizing it, and then finally evaluating, what it is they're doing with this information, their product. So sharing a model like this can help students understand information literacy. I shared it with some students in Greece, and it was an international virtual world experience. So students are no longer bound by physical classroom walls, as those of you at this conference already understand. Library and information skills can be embedded into immersive learning, and soon they can be embedded in virtual reality. How many of you have had the opportunity to try Google Cardboard? If you type a Y in text chat, if you've had a chance to do that. There are, as I said, there are differences between virtual worlds and virtual reality because the use of a head-mounted display means that you're actually, instead of moving your hand to click that mouse, you're looking through your eyes. It's almost like your eyes become the mouse. As more haptics, gloves and sensory equipment become available, virtual reality experiences will become even more lifelike. So I see some of you have had a chance to try Google Cardboard. I know students are already trying this in classrooms. For only around $10, you can experience virtual reality by dropping your phone into something like this headset on the screen, a Google Cardboard head-mounted display. The virtual reality experiences that I've tried are mostly through observation because I've found that it's kind of difficult to interact with others using this headset because the user interaction display is not exactly the same as it might be in an immersive world like Second Life. Many of you understand already the value and the potential of immersive learning through interactive simulation. Just like reading and writing are both important, so too observing and an immersive experience and creating an immersive experience like my students did in Minecraft, both are valuable. Evaluating virtual immersive learning experiences and evaluating virtual reality experiences for accuracy, authority, aesthetic appeal, and other elements is certainly a big part of information literacy. Suzette's going to share some of the various VR systems that are currently on the market. But first I wanted to mention that research has already shown the potential for learning and for librarianship in virtual spaces. Just one article here, Gant and Woodland examined 75 virtual world libraries, and they concluded and believe that more virtual information spaces will expand in the future. And also at a recent library conference in Australia, a husband and wife team demonstrated the virtual reality to a well-attended session that was full of excited librarians who wanted to try it out. And they predicted also that it will not be long before you'll be able to wear a virtual reality headset at the library. People still certainly enjoy reading books. Sometimes we read a book and we enjoy watching it be adapted to the big screen. And sometimes we can argue over whether the movie captured the thoughts and the themes that were in the book. Soon, perhaps we will enter the book, just as we can enter immersive experiences in virtual worlds. Advocating a personal responsibility for digital citizenship has risen to the top of my priorities as an information professional. You know that we all live in a constantly connected digital culture, and evaluating the information that we take in right from our mobile devices in our pockets 24/7 is up to us. With social media, with Web 2.0 content, creation and curation tools, and hyperlinked media, we're just bombarded by information daily. So certainly, I think it's critical that we teach our students how to be information literate and how to be good digital citizens. Soon, as I said, virtual reality will be a part of that quest, and understanding digital citizenship in virtual reality really needs to be emphasized before we take that headset and put it on and explore virtual reality. Now we're going to hear from Suzette Lewis, who I feel is on the cutting edge of virtual reality in education, and I'm really excited and grateful to have a chance to work with Suzette. Remember to jot down some questions that you might have about virtual reality and virtual reality systems.
Thank you, Val. That was great. Hi, I'm Suzette Lewis, and as she said, I'm a PhD candidate, hopefully in my final year at the University of Washington's College of Education. Before I get started, I wanted to point out that I'm not an expert in virtual reality by any means, although I have had the privilege to talk with some experts in the field. I'm just someone who since 2013 has been developing with Oculus Rift and Unity, and prior to that, I was well known as a teacher, a mom, and a gamer. Our family of five was heavily into various multiplayer games over the years, and like many people you might know here in Second Life, back in the day we were part of a very large raiding guild in World of Warcraft. In fact, I used to get teased for that all the time. People wonder, why did I suddenly shift my attention toward VR devices like Oculus Rift? Well, back in 2011, 2012, after being in the PhD program for a couple of years, I accidentally registered for a class at UW called something like Designing Virtual Worlds. And I thought it was a course about game design. It was actually the first course in three taught by Randy Heinrichs, leading the it was leading to a certificate in virtual worlds, but I didn't know that at the time. And through this class, I met many amazing friends, fellow students who are now called AV alumni. Some of them are here today. Hi, everybody. Because we are all avatars and we're now alumni of that program. Anyway, midway through that year, I started getting sick. I was having major neurological and vascular problems. And by May of 2012, I was in really serious trouble. A couple of neurologists, cardiologists, pulmonologists, and many, many trips to the famous UW Medical Center could not get me healthy. And this went on for months and years. In fact, with treatment, I actually seemed to get worse over time. I wasn't able to drive, and I finally got to the point where I couldn't even go to campus on the bus. It was like really risky for me to do so. So I eventually started developing problems expressing myself while speaking. Some people here can vouch for that. And reading and writing got to be nearly impossible for me for several months. And that wasn't a really good path for a PhD student. So by the summer of 2013, I had stopped going to campus completely. It was actually really embarrassing for me to sit in class and had these meltdowns. So I started talking to no one other than my family and my advisor, and she was really sympathetic. And I was doing everything pretty much independent study by that point. And I had enough credits already to graduate. I just needed to figure out, what I wanted to do for a doctoral study. And being without, I couldn't go anywhere, and I had no ideas what I was going to do, and I wasn't able to test out my original idea for a digital environment with students in a nearby school. So I was kind of like, oh, what am I going to do? So I felt alone. I felt helpless. And fortunately, I was still a member of the UW Av alumni. And some of my colleagues, again, some of them are here, they had not given up on me. They had been having meetings each month in Second Life at the UW Island, and they would always invite me to attend. And of course, for a while I didn't go. Just logging in would be difficult, but I started attending and I told them how I'd lost many of my previous abilities. I'd even forgotten the basics of building in Second Life. Can you believe that? So, sorry, I got a little bit emotional there. Anyway, these amazing people like Val next to me and Zinnia, who's out there in the audience, and Susan, or I should say Everart, and Agile Bill, who I saw earlier today. Anyway, they were at those meetings, and they didn't care if I had a medical disability. They knew many other people in this world here who had suffered through other problems had found a sense of community as avatars. And they always seemed delighted to see me show up for meetings, even when I couldn't say more than a sentence or two, or the stuff I did say sounded really ridiculous. Anyway, one day that summer, Zinnia told me there was a serious play conference near Seattle in August, and she said that Randy Heinrichs would be the MC and that the AV alumni were invited to serve as volunteers in return for free attendance. And I'd never met any of them in person, so that made me really nervous. But what gave me incredible anxiety was the thought of leaving my home when I hadn't been able to be on my feet for more than a few minutes at a time. And I thought, what can I do as a volunteer, and how can I participate physically? And eventually we thought I could be one of the photographers. And so I made arrangements with my spouse to drive me there. And it was at DigiPen in Redmond. And little did I know that one of the vendors that was there, and I just remember this so clearly, was providing a demonstration of the Oculus Rift DK1. I mean, how could this be possible? So anyway, I remember taking photographs of various people trying out the Rift headset, and I just couldn't help but notice how they all had these amazed expressions on their faces, and I just wanted to keep taking more and more pictures of them because they were just so delighted. And I just knew there was something special about this particular tool. This early development kit, which was lacking positional tracking at the time, if you'll recall that, those of you who know it was lacking positional tracking at the time, was and it was being demoed just with a laptop, by the way, also. But it was having this huge effect on people and these were people who are used to games and immersive tools, and they were just like, wow, this is awesome. So that's when I realized that I owed my AV alumni friends a huge thank you. Because of them, I had found the basis of my doctoral research project. And it would be something that I could build at home with Unity. And I'm not going to go into my work. You can look me up and find out all about what I do, but because we're going to talk about libraries in VR today. But anyway, with the programming assistance of one of my kids, who is also a grad student at the College of Engineering here, we started building our first VR educational intervention, and we made a deal. I do the design work, he writes all the scripts. In November of that year, I had my very own Rift, and the rest is history. So we like to joke around that if I hadn't been sick, I would have ended up collecting data in a classroom and I would have missed the significance of VR entirely. I probably would have just let it pass me by. So I'd like to thank the UW alumni community and the rest of the community in Second Life for helping me recover my speech ability over the weeks and months virtually. I hope one day after I graduate, I will return the favor somehow. And in the meantime, I have the privilege of presenting with my colleague Val. This is such a great opportunity. So, before we talk about VR hardware and software, let's think about immersion and presence. And as I talk, I want all of you guys to participate. This is really a discussion, so you don't need to feel, well, I see you're discussing, so this is good, but feel free to jump right in. Anyway, I'm just going to keep going and you guys just type away. As an educator, my doctoral focus is technically not on VR exactly, but on immersive technologies and digital learning environments. I'm especially interested in anything that affects cognition in particular ways, such as embodiment in VR. Designing for learning in immersive environments leads us to ask, how do immersion and presence impact cognitive performance? According to Cummings, Balanson, and Fiedler at Stanford University, immersion is an objective measure of the system's technology, or its ability to shut out physical reality. And presence, or a sense of being there, is a psychological experience directly affected by the level of the system's success at being immersive. So, they're very related, right? My review of the prior literature indicated that many variables contribute to a high quality learning simulation, but not all variables are equally important. At the top of some recent lists are field of view, resolution, positional tracking, frame rate, positional audio, and low latency from input devices, as well as low latency from the headset movement itself. You know, you don't want to turn your head and have this kind of lag. So all of these factors of immersion help increase presence in virtual reality environments. When combined with a well-designed educational application with engaging plots or narratives, these immersive tools should also contribute to improved learning performance. Neuroscience research tells us that immersion in VR allows us to construct knowledge from direct experience as opposed to an indirect experience, like watching our avatar do things is an example of a third person experience, and our brain knows it. Learning in VR is also in contrast to trying to learn learning through reading descriptions or listening to lectures from others. So you want to learn through personal experience. That's the best way, right? And then indirect experiences are good too, but they're not quite up there as well, right? So that's why I'm so excited about VR. When we experience our activities in VR, our neurons believe it is us carrying out the action and that we are learning by doing. We are learning by doing. Our brains change with practice in VR, and we can utilize that new skill in the physical world. And I want to repeat that because I've done some things in Second Life that I thought were really, really awesome too, and that reminded me of this, but my brain didn't believe it was me doing it. And so that's the difference. We improve our performance through personal experience, just as we do in the physical world. However, as much as we might like to think otherwise, this change in the brain does not happen when we sit in front of our computer and stare at our avatars in Second Life. Now, I want to um, do a little aside, except for speaking. I obviously improved my ability to speak. You hear me talking today. So people do a lot of language work in Second Life, and I do want to point out that that work is incredible. So when people are actually doing work in Second Life, that work is being done, whether the language work. So this research that people are doing, they're not talking about that. They're talking about when we're watching our avatars from a third person perspective. Okay, that's my aside because I have to defend that. Because I have a prejudice and I appreciate a lot of work that's being done here. Okay, for more information on this phenomenon, read the fascinating work of Professors Bill Wynn and Tom Furness from the UW HIT Lab, and that's the Human Interface Technology Lab's website, and it's you just Google that, and they do a lot of work on the differences between VR and other immersive environments. And Bill Wynn, by the way, was from the College of Education, and he has since passed away. Now it's time to review the big VR hardware players of 2016. On the market this year, we have Viewers, Mobile VR, and Tethered VR. As you saw earlier, Val has tested some of these, and I'm happy to say that I've been lucky enough to add some of these devices to my own basement VR lab. The focus of this section is practicality for each type of device in the school library of the future. Naturally, depending on the immersive qualities of the tech that goes into the systems, these head-mounted displays may be more or less suitable for different uses. First of all, could you please type into chat again if you've tried, at least tested, some type of VR headset? Now, we saw before some people had used Google Cardboard, but there are a lot of other HMTs out there as well. So I know Val has, I know a few of you have used Google Cardboard, any others? And in addition to that, oh, okay, see, we've got quite a few. Look at that. Excellent, excellent. And are there any other HMD owners out there? So we've got some testers, any owners, any proud investors? Awesome. Okay, yeah, pre-order. Oh, excellent. So as we go through these, again, feel free to type in chat with any comments on your own experiences with these, if applicable, because I want everybody to feel comfortable just to say whatever. Keeping in mind that anything you may have tried out or, in the past, it might have been a development kit. It probably wasn't an official consumer version. Hopefully that won't be the product that we will expect to see in a library of the future. So again, we're thinking about future libraries. We hope that the future libraries will get the excellent consumer versions. All right. So, present-day educational spaces have already looked into Google Cardboard, as you know, as a means to introduce their students to VR learning. Google Cardboard's innovative message is that they can bring a taste of VR to the masses for a very low price or for free if you have the parts on hand. Many other companies have created clones of this model as well, and they can be purchased for $15 to $30 on average, depending on materials. All of these clones run on the same Google app, which you can download to your Android phone or your iPhone. Librarians of the future should be cautious. A number of other apps videos I've been finding, which are supposedly Google Cardboard compatible, sometimes only run on an Android phone, and that's really annoying if you have an iPhone. So be careful, iPhone users. And in a few minutes, we'll discuss some of these apps. So Google Cardboard is bringing VR to, or a VR viewer, we'll have to say it's a viewer, to the masses. Let's move on to the next one is Samsung Gear VR, and this is a partnership with Oculus, in case for those of you who didn't know. Basically, it's their mobile VR device, and you put on this $99 headset and drop in your new Samsung phone, and poof, you have a reasonably decent VR experience. It's quite a step up from Google Cardboard. But beware, these kinds of systems are wonderful because they don't require a high-end computer to operate, but they also don't allow for positional body tracking yet. So you get the rotational tracking, and that's awesome. Really great visuals, but we don't have positional body tracking yet with the Gear VR. You will get an Xbox One gamepad for interaction. It ships with one. And one feature I'm really excited about with the Gear VR is the VR Netflix. I think it would be really awesome to have a chance to watch a movie, like an educational movie, with a screen right against my eyes and the headphones, and block out the world and see if we can watch some science or history videos and be completely immersed in that, not be distracted by everything that's going on around you. But if you're interested in the market, if you're in the market for a new phone, and our household always is, it's an easy decision right now or to make for your future library, because right now the Gear VR is free. If you purchase a Samsung Galaxy S7 from just about anywhere, you can get a free Gear VR from Samsung. This is happening right now. And it's just for a short time, so check with your wireless provider for the details if you're interested. You get this little form you fill out and you submit it, and they ship you a free Gear VR. Okay, and I'm not trying to sell you one, so I'm just telling you that that's happening. Oculus took the Rift to the next level and created the Oculus Touch system, which also will have integrated hand interaction in the virtual reality environment. We bought the DK1 development kit, as I said, in 2013. Yeah, and yes, they all work with eyeglass users, Agile Bill. They all do. Yes, absolutely. And my household can verify that. as well, followed by 2 more DKs to do our research. And we were delighted with the positional tracking of the Rift, but definitely looked forward to the more, you know, stronger improvements with the consumer version, which is shipping this month. We can't wait to receive ours in 18 days. And of course, the touch components are still a couple months away, but we already have ours reserved. And the Rift CV1 will have outstanding optics in their consumer version, excellent comfort, and a real natural feeling in the tracking. This VR system and the HTC Vive, which we'll see next, put tools covered with sensors in each hand. And then you move each hand independently, which, depending on the program, allows a person to see their virtual hands in the VR app and also allows you to hold virtual tools in the environment. Buttons allow for interacting naturally with objects, and so you can like reach for things and pick up things and manipulate things, and you're doing it with your hands as opposed to a keyboard and mouse or a gamepad. And as I say, this is very different from a typical gamepad like the Xbox One, which is shipping with the Gear VR, because when you hold two hands together in front of you, that feels differently, right? That's not as natural as when you're actually reaching and grasping. Okay. Steam's HTC Vive Lighthouse system right now is the favorite among people who want it all. It's also slightly more expensive than the competition. This system, which will also arrive in my lab in less than a month, will allow full interaction with hands and tools in a 15 by 15 foot space. Yes, walking around the room will be very exciting. I always wanted my own holodeck, by the way. People who were in my group back in 2012 can verify that. It provides excellent positional tracking with a multitude of sensors. For librarians of the future who have a big budget, space for movement, and computer upgrading isn't a problem, this is a good investment for the library. I could say this because the Vive will be compatible with apps created for their competitors. That means that titles sold by Facebook for Oculus and the Gear VR will also be playable on the Vive, thanks to forward thinking by some people who very badly want to sell content. I would also expect the same to be true with other games and VR movies as well. However, it is unknown if the Rift will eventually be able to access Vive-ready titles. Both the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift will require advanced graphics cards and a fast computer system. We purchased the GeForce GTX 980 to replace her 770s to get ready for our consumer versions. That was an annoyingly expensive upgrade. Luckily, the rest of our system specs were fine. Librarians of the future and their IT staff will need to consider PC hardware in their purchases, and the fact that these high-end tethered systems are currently not compatible with Macs. What a bummer. For this reason, librarians of the future who want the best possible immersion for their patrons, but not the hassle or extra expense, may be more interested in this next choice. PlayStation VR. In the console market, we have PlayStation 4's VR headset. I have heard this is an excellent product, although I haven't had the opportunity to try it personally. And it might be a great alternative to the previous two contenders for the library of the future if the device can access key popular content as well. The PlayStation 4 has been around for a while and is much less expensive than a VR-ready computer. Unfortunately, it's been overshadowed by the other devices because Sony didn't have a developer kit available like the other big names. We bought a PlayStation 4 with a fancy camera the day we heard about PlayStation's Project Morpheus, that was the old name for PlayStation VR, in hopes that we'd be ready for this. And we've been waiting patiently ever since for their consumer version. We can't wait to compare all of the headsets side by side. Open source virtual reality. Now, this is a headset made by Razer, and the VR code is being put together as a huge project by many big names in the immersive tech world. If you wish you'd picked up an old dev kit when you'd had a chance and now those affordable dev kits are no longer for sale by Oculus, then this might be something to consider. It's not meant to be consumer ready, but it's quite affordable and it could be fun for those who love to tinker and want to help contribute to the greater good. For librarians of the future, this might be an influential product. And if it's not quite on par with the Rift and Vive right now, don't worry. Just watch this project closely in the years to come. I have a feeling this is going to be the big one to watch. So, how do they rank? What do you think? Which one has the highest quality? At least according to this graph. Which one has the lowest quality? I'm not going to suggest that you should buy any of these in quarter two of 2016. My purpose here is to get you to think about your future hardware curation or starting your library's VR collection next year. But I will share this blog from the Gama Sutra so you can see the kinds of articles being written on a regular basis. I'm positive there will be many more of these by summer and after more people have a chance to test the consumer versions with some decent content over time. I'm a big believer that the content really helps showcase the hardware. As we go through these apps now, speaking about content, as we go through these briefly, feel free to continue to type in chat if you know of good VR apps for one of these categories. One thing I notice is that the first four on the list match up pretty well with how we use Second Life. So as we talk about them, notice the commonalities and try to think about how each of these are different in VR versus a virtual world. And type any ideas you have. Google with me if you like. Open up a browser and do some searching. So first up, we have tours. Hey, that sounds familiar. It's one of the first things I remember us doing in Second Life. We went on tours. So right now, Google Cardboard says, Google Cardboard now lets you tour the White House in virtual reality. And it's a 5-minute video. And apparently the cameras they used, or the camera cost $15,000, something like that. So there's a social studies field trip to the White House and get to see what it looks like in case you never make it to Washington, D.C. The American Museum of Natural History also partnered with Google to create expeditions. There's another example of a tour, allowing students from anywhere to take tours of the museum attractions. And yes, I did check, and there is a dinosaur fossil hall there. So, for kids who maybe they're not into mammals, maybe they're not into the fish, they can go see the dinosaurs. So there are lots of things like that. So I'm sure you guys can find many, many examples, and that's just right now. Simulations. So simulations a little different from tours. Again, you guys are experts on tours and simulations. You've seen them in virtual worlds already. So just imagine them in VR. So you type into your search engine VR spacewalk. Oh my gosh, all this stuff pops up. It's pretty incredible. It's like really being in space. Or Birdly, the full body flight simulator. So that's a really funny thing to watch. I don't know if I'll ever personally be able to try that because you have to have a lot of other hardware to go with your VR setup. Or the 80s retro arcade virtual environment, an example of how to create an interactive walk-through history for future youth. This seems like a pretty good model of somebody wanted to say, like, when we get later down into the makerspace, that would be kind of a fun project to have students build something like this. For other people. Again, things that we see people doing in Second Life, building these kinds of things, and then they allow other people to come in and enjoy them. So virtual live events, I gave some examples that I don't know if they really match the category, but they popped up. So New York Times right now, this just came out like this past week. They have a video up. It's alive. Experience the presidential campaign. A virtual reality film allows you to experience the Republican and Democrat perspectives. But it's kind of interesting. They only show those two perspectives. So if you want to see what it's like to attend events for any of the other parties, you're out of luck, and only for certain candidates. So it's just a few candidates, but it's like being there. It really is. So if you have a Google Cardboard, check it out. And the Mountain Dew VR Snow, that's another virtual live event that they had that was really popular along with the skateboard event. It was fans loved like going on these mountainy jumps, and the helicopter went along and filmed the whole thing, and it was just like, wow, we're flying along in this guy's snowboard, and very immersive and yeah, breathtaking. That's a very cool one too. If you have a Google Cardboard, check it out. So those were promoted as virtual live events, but they're not quite the same thing as what Facebook has in mind for true virtual live events. And they want to have people attending basketball games and music concerts and theatrical productions where every user has the best seat in the house in real time, right? So that's a different kind of virtual live event than these recorded experiences. So we'll see in the future some differentiation between what we consider a virtual live event. And then the next category, interactive educational activities. This gets into my favorite kinds of apps, and I didn't I didn't list any here because I just uh, went for something that was sitting in my house, which ended up being like a game. I said one good model for an interactive app for VR was created by Jesse Shell, because I'm a fan of Jesse Shell. And it's quite clever, although not educational. It's been a favorite of college students visiting our lab, trying out devices and apps. The app is interactive, engaging, yet not too violent. Although you do die if you don't solve the puzzles correctly. It's called I Expect You to Die. I suppose that's because that's what happens usually on the first try. I don't want to say much more in case you try it, other than it's full of carefully worded clues. Doesn't involve much moving around, so simulator sickness isn't an issue. I remember Agile Bill telling me we had a discussion about simulator sickness a while back. Remember that? And yet it's highly immersive, visually appealing, interactive, and definitely requires some thinking as opposed to luck to win it. So it works really, really well on the DK2s. I haven't tried it on any other headsets. So that's a really great model, though, I think, for an interactive educational app. But I haven't found anything that's just that good yet, so I don't want to recommend any other ones. The 360-degree immersive storytelling. This could be the aspect of VR. Now, this is the big thing. This could be the aspect of VR that allows it to become an essential mainstream digital experience. And I know there's some people here that are interested in immersive storytelling as well. So think 4K resolution, 360 degrees, and now add some additional features like interaction, ways to re-experience the scenes. What immersive story would you tell if you had the ability, the equipment to create that movie? Amazon's hiring right now. Look it up. Just story broke this week. They're hiring innovative people to develop their future VR video platform. Just like librarians of the future, Amazon knows that VR will be important for storytelling. And then VR Makerspace, I think Val already covered that. Minecraft now has a new version coming out just for Oculus. So you guys can look that up on your own. And I think that there's just one problem right now when we talk about all of this for children, and that's that right now the headsets are only recommended for students who are 13 or older, if it's for the VR, the Rift, or the Vive, or 12 or older for the PlayStation. So they're just not they're not recommended for younger children at this time. So we're going to have to wait. That's why we're talking about libraries of the future, because it's not libraries of the present. At least not right now. We don't even know if Google Cardboard's safe for kids, but they're using them. So, as Val mentioned, during the age of the book, when print was at the top of the information hierarchy, a good librarian could recommend the perfect reading material for a particular reader. In the library of the future, many people will be utilizing VR devices and apps to gain information, but to experience it rather than read it, right? So that's it, to experience it rather than read it. And I talked about that before. Learning by doing. The librarian will manage the collection. The IT staff will help keep everything working smoothly. Teachers will come looking for curriculum support, and students will look for VR titles in the same way that they look for books and other media now. So on this slide, I ask you to imagine that you're the librarian with these three scenarios. They include rhetorical questions. Now, let's switch roles. Close your eyes and imagine that you're one of the patrons at the library and you need some advice for VR. You've come in. Okay, close your eyes. You're a high school physics teacher planning a unit on electricity and magnetism, and you want to have a lab session where your students will use an HMD to visualize difficult mathematical concepts in this subject area. You do an online search and discover there are many VR apps that claim to reference either electricity or magnetism, but you have no way to find out which of them are going to cover the content you need. Fortunately, your librarian has experience searching for educational VR apps, has evaluated apps, and has already acquired a number of popular apps for the district's virtual library. Within minutes, you put on an HMD recommended by the librarian for the particular app and try out the top 3 apps suggested for your lesson. One of the apps is ideal for the task. visually representing the mathematical ideas in a fun, experiential way. You are excited because you know that your students will not only be engaged, but they will learn through personal experience with that VR app. You decide to buy the app and you check out a classroom set of HMDs and the appropriate hand tracking input devices for the next day. So, as you can tell, and as Val said earlier, we believe that yes, in the libraries of the future, patrons will be checking out VR devices and titles. Librarians of the future have exciting and important work ahead. So what can you do today? Make your plans. What sites will you read? Which forums will you join? There are lots of things you can do right now, even if you don't have access to a headset. And as Val said, she goes regularly to special events and conventions where the public is invited to try out the latest tech. That's a great strategy. And she's always welcome to come to my lab again soon and try out these latest arrivals. And so is the rest of the Av alumni. Any of you guys are local, come on over. The more the merrier. So some final thoughts. Perspective is powerful. Remember, in VR, students are experiencing content in the first-person perspective. Creators of VR content, especially providers of live events and immersive storytelling, need to think about the implications of perspective taking. Growing, developing minds need to be exposed to multiple perspectives and views. I can remember my history teacher telling us how the textbook had just been replaced because the old version was written from a dominant viewpoint. It had to be thrown out because it was discovered that it not only left out the perspective of minority groups, but in some chapters, it included historical inaccuracies as a result. Imagine if we'd memorized that so-called history and believed it. This is the case in education as well as in the world of visual representations. To a privileged VR content creator in power or control, there may be only one accepted approach or viewpoint, and that perspective is used to view the surroundings as if everything should be understood from where I am standing. A limited view may lead to incorrect assumptions about ourselves and our place in the world. As consumers and creators of educational VR content, it is not enough to say, I'm sure this is the best view or the most representative view. I encourage librarians of the future to seek culturally sensitive VR titles from multiple perspectives. And remember, VR childhood experiences matter. Their memories are going to last a long time when they learn them in VR. And digital citizenship is going to be taught by the librarians of the future. Librarians of the future are going to be evaluating this content. Libraries may not look the same or offer the same types of materials, but librarians who are humans who can prioritize information needs beyond hyperlinked metadata hits are needed more than ever before in history. I really believe this. To Val and the rest of the librarians out there, I thank you for your hard work, and we thank you for listening today. Any questions?
Thanks so much. I wish we had a lot longer to go on because there's just so much exciting things taking place as libraries change, and we learn so much about virtual reality, and I think we can't do it alone. That's why it's so important that we share our knowledge with each other and build our professional learning networks. I'm really grateful to have Suzette here in my personal learning network. And I know we are out of time, but feel free to connect with us, friend us in Second Life, look us up later if you'd like to continue exploring virtual reality.
And thank you for all the participation in chat. That was fantastic.
I think that's an interesting question from Ran about augmented reality and virtual reality. It's so hard to predict how all of these things are going to evolve. Right now, I think AR is much more accessible for younger students to use than virtual reality, but who knows as we expand. And I do want to point out that virtual worlds and virtual reality are such different experiences. I think there's really a place for both, and there will continue to be a place for both for some time in the future.
And I think all of there are a couple questions that I think have the same answer. I think all of this is evolving, and so it's hard to give anything a finite answer because even a year or two ago, we wouldn't have known that it would look like this. So all of you and the people that you know are going to be the ones who help answer these questions and hopefully bring these positive outcomes forward. I am seeing a lot of interesting things from Gentle Heron, and I saw an article written just a week ago that said we need to start saying like VR in 2016, just just kind of make that distinguished, um, to distinguish what we're talking about because it is very different, and the platforms are designed to be multiplayer. They're designed to be collaborative. Those kinds of things that you're asking about. They're the 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 backbone, the infrastructure is in place, and so and again because it's driven by a market, right? So there's money, there's a financial interest for people to come together and participate with each other, and so that's really good for us.
I see Gentle put something in the text chat about the terms VR and VW being interchangeable. A lot of people get them think they're really the same, and they're not. There's just such differences in having on that head-mounted display and in sitting in a space like we're sitting right now, where I see the big picture, not just my perspective, but the big picture and interaction with all of you. So I think there's room, and I think librarians of the future need to think about matching the best tool with the information need and the purpose.
Exactly. Yep. And if you have you seen some of the demos of like the theaters that they have right now already set up for VR? So they have these rooms, and people put on their head-mounted display, and then they don't see themselves in the third person perspective, but they see everyone else that's in this uh, same auditorium. And I might be a comedian standing up here practicing my stand up routine, and you are all real people in the audience, and you might be giving me feedback, and we all feel like we're actually there together. So they have these structures are already in place. We could, if we all had a headset right now, we could all drop into one of those rooms. They're already established. Now, what are the implications for education then? Could students work on their public speaking skills, or could they, and again, the parallels to virtual worlds are getting greater and greater. And I just also downloaded High Fidelity finally and tried that out because I wanted to know what that was like. And it is very interesting. There are a lot of different uses for that I see as well. So there, I didn't understand. It's hard to understand what something is like until you try it, I guess. And I'm getting less and less skeptical, and I'm starting to see that if we can imagine it here, we can imagine it in VR.
I noticed a question from Everard about what are the options for collaboration in VR. And Suzette, you mentioned something about that, because I know we've talked about interactivity, that the developers need to find a way for the user interface to be a little more collaborative.
Yeah, I was just criticized yesterday for pushing that too much. So In something else that I wrote recently, I was saying that there needs to be more interactivity and more collaboration. And I was criticizing some apps that were all kind of sit and get. And so I kind of took a lot of that out of, of what I said today because I didn't want to sound so negative. But what I'm designing, it requires collaboration amongst the people that are in the space, and there's no way to complete the tasks unless the people work together, and that's part of the design. So I think it comes down to content designers, right? So it's up to the people who are creating the educational activity to say, well, do I just like group work? Do you want to make it group work so that the most dominant person can do it all for everyone? Or do you want to create group work in such a way that people have to work together in order for them to all be successful? So in our design, we program the objects in such a way that people have to work together in order for them to all be successful, and then we have a very motivating story so that they want to keep going, and because they want to save the cute wildlife at the end. It's driven by that. So um, if if they don't work together, then the deer stays behind the fire and they can't build the bridge and complete the engineering task. And so there are all these reasons. And so the engineering task is the objective, and one person can't just dominate. That's it.
I hope you've kind of got a glimpse into what the future of libraries might look like. And I think as a librarian, I might point out, we can't learn everything and explore every app. There's just too many things out there every single day coming at us. So I hope that librarians don't feel overwhelmed to suddenly, feel like they need to be experts in virtual reality as well as physical and augmented space, because none of us can. But we can find tools that help us. Sites like creative, what's the one that Common Sense Media. I'm sure that they are evaluating mobile apps. I'm sure that they will begin evaluating virtual reality apps for education, and we can go to places like that to find help for, as we all agree, finding the best tool for the job.
I'm so sorry about this, Val, but we have to wrap it up. We would like to encourage everyone to go over and join us in Avacon Grid. We've got some really exciting speakers over there for you today. Again, I am so sorry, Val, because I could listen to you talk all day long. That would be awesome and interactive. I would love to see that.